The room hummed with an oppressive tension. Within the vast expanse of the Galactic Council's chamber, the heavy silence felt like the calm before a storm. The council members, representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy, sat in their seats, tall and imposing in their floating chairs, each one a symbol of their status and influence. At the center of the room, a hologram flickered to life, displaying a stark image of Earth, blue oceans, lush landmasses, and an atmosphere teeming with life. Jalaran, a respected diplomat of the Zinthri species, leaned forward, his golden skin catching the light from the holographic projection. His pale eyes scanned the room, aware of the shifting undercurrents. A heated debate was unfolding, but this was no ordinary matter. This was Earth. The humans. "We cannot let this continue," growled Zar, a towering being of crystalline form. His voice was sharp, as jagged as his body, his fingers twitching with impatience. "These humans are a threat. They are starting to encroach upon our borders. Their species has no respect for galactic law." Jalaran sighed, his smooth brow furrowing. "Zar, you speak in absolutes, but have we not learned the folly of underestimating others based on their differences?" His voice, calm and measured, cut through the noise, but not without a cost. "These humans, though crude in their methods, are not the savages you imagine. They are driven by something primal, something admirable." The council chamber stilled. The other members glanced at each other, puzzled by Jalaran's tone. For centuries, the Galactic Council had operated on the principle of control, of maintaining order by any means necessary. The idea that one of their own would defend humanity seemed absurd. "But they kill, they destroy without reason," Zar retorted, his shimmering fingers clenched into fists. "What do you call that if not barbarism?" "Survival," Jalaran replied quietly, his gaze shifting back to the image of Earth. "The human species does what it must to survive. Do we not, at times, resort to violence in the name of preservation?" A ripple of discontent passed through the chamber, and Jalaran could feel the temperature rise, even without the need for sensors. The debate had begun, but Jalaran knew it would only end with one outcome: war. The council had already decided that humanity's territorial claims would not be tolerated, but the reasons for their aggression were not as clear-cut as they wanted to believe. The hologram of Earth flickered, and a new image replaced it, a fleet of human ships, dark and imposing, slowly moving toward the Zinthri-controlled space sector. Their sleek designs had been altered in response to the increasing hostilities. The humans were adapting quickly. Too quickly for comfort. Jalaran's fingers curled around the armrest of his chair. His mind raced, calculating the consequences of the upcoming decision. "I propose something unorthodox," he said, his voice lower now, each word carefully chosen. The council members leaned in, intrigued yet skeptical. Jalaran had the ear of the council, but this was a risk. One misstep, and he could be exiled, or worse. "I propose we send a diplomatic envoy. Not to conquer or destroy, but to understand. I will go myself, to Earth, to learn what drives them. Why are they so persistent in their attempts to push beyond their borders?" Jalaran's gaze was unwavering as he stared into the faces of the other council members. "We must know what we are dealing with before deciding whether to wipe them out or help them." Zar's eyes narrowed. "You want to give them time to build an army strong enough to challenge us?" he spat. "This is madness." "I want to give us time to understand them," Jalaran responded, his voice firm. "We risk much by moving forward without knowledge. Humans are not the mindless beasts you imagine. They are something more. They deserve the chance to prove that." A long silence stretched across the chamber. The council members exchanged glances, considering Jalaran's words. Few were willing to risk a change in the status quo. But the proposal lingered, an idea that would not be so easily dismissed. Jalaran's heart pounded, but he did not allow his composure to falter. He was playing a dangerous game, but the stakes were higher than he had ever faced. This was more than a diplomatic mission. This was a choice between war and peace, between destruction and understanding. And it would not be long before his decision would be tested. Finally, the council's leader, a tall, dark-skinned entity of swirling energy, spoke. "You will go. But understand this, Jalaran," the leader's voice reverberated through the chamber, "if you fail to convince the humans, if their actions prove more destructive than we anticipate, you will be held accountable." Jalaran nodded, his resolve solidifying. "I understand. But I will not fail." As the council began to dissolve into murmurs, Jalaran stood, the weight of his mission pressing down on him. The image of Earth loomed before him once more. He had never felt so uncertain, so aware of the thin thread between success and catastrophe. Outside the chamber, the galaxy waited, its fate now tangled with the future of humanity. The hum of the Zinthari warship reverberated through the hull, a constant reminder of the distance between Jalaran and the council chamber he had left behind. The metallic scent of the ship's interior mixed with the faint bitterness of the sterilizing air, an aroma Jalaran had long since learned to ignore. The ship cut through the stars like a dagger, sleek and swift, and the dark expanse outside the viewport felt both infinite and oppressive. Jalaran stood at the helm, his thoughts as dark and deep as the void before him. The council had sanctioned his mission, but their words still echoed in his mind: "If you fail to convince the humans, you will be held accountable." There was no room for error. The weight of that truth pressed against his chest, each breath a reminder of the gamble he was about to undertake. Behind him, the quiet voice of his pilot, Terran, broke the silence. "We'll be in Earth's orbit within the hour. Are you prepared, Jalaran?" Jalaran turned to face her, his pale eyes narrowing slightly. Terran was a Zinthari like him, her demeanor cold and precise. She was one of the best in the fleet, but even she couldn't mask the uncertainty in her voice. The mission was dangerous, no one had ever attempted to engage with the humans without the weight of force behind them. Yet, here Jalaran was, gambling the fate of two species on an untested theory. "I don't know if prepared is the right word," he admitted, his voice low but steady. "But I am committed." Terran gave him a sharp nod, her dark hair shifting with emotion. "Good. It's just. Earth is unlike anything we've encountered. Their instincts are primal, violent, unpredictable. They've fought wars amongst themselves for millennia. That is why I need to understand them," Jalaran replied, his gaze returning to the viewport. The stars were blurring, and for a moment, he felt as though he were being pulled into the dark, as if the mission itself might swallow him whole. Terran's fingers hovered over the control panel, her face reflecting the soft blue light. "You'll need to move fast once we make contact. If you don't, their governments will decide for us. We won't have time to explain." Jalaran nodded slowly. He had already prepared a plan. He would land near a major human city, make contact with a local government representative, and explain his mission. He had hoped to meet with a leader, someone with the capacity for reason, but he feared that the humans' distrust would force his hand into confrontation before he could make his case. A sharp ping echoed through the ship, and Terran's expression shifted to one of focus. "Incoming communication," she said, before tapping a command on the console. A hologram flickered to life in front of them, an image of the Galactic Council's leader, its swirling energy form barely contained by the confines of the holographic projection. Jalaran, the leader's voice crackled through the speakers, as deep and resonant as ever. "You are nearing Earth's atmosphere. I hope you have made the necessary preparations for what comes next." Jalaran met the gaze of the hologram, his expression unwavering. "I'm prepared for whatever happens. But I'm not here to fight. I'm here to understand. These humans, they have a power within them, a resilience that's different from anything we've seen before." The council leader's tone grew cold. "Their power is their most dangerous asset. Do not forget that. You have been granted this opportunity because of your record, Jalaran. But if you fail, you will bear the consequences." "I will succeed," Jalaran responded firmly, cutting off the transmission. There was no time for further words. The mission was now in his hands. The ship continued its descent toward Earth, its sleek hull cutting through the atmosphere with ease. Jalaran watched as the planet's surface came into view, the bright blues and greens of oceans and forests contrasting sharply against the dark, swirling clouds that covered much of the land. Terran spoke again, her voice soft but intense. Once we land, we won't have much time before the humans notice us. Their sensors are highly advanced, and they're unpredictable. You'll need to make your contact immediately. I'll be monitoring the situation from here, ready to pull you out if things go south. Jalaran nodded, his pulse quickening as the ship sliced through the clouds. Below, cities sprawled out beneath him, their lights glittering like 1,000 stars. The vastness of human civilization was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It wasn't just a planet, it was a species teeming with life, fighting to find its place among the stars. As the ship neared the ground, Jalaran's heart began to race. His hands clenched around the console. The time had come. No matter what he encountered, no matter how the humans reacted, there would be no turning back now. The ship shuddered slightly as it made contact with the Earth's surface, the engines powering down with a quiet hum. The air outside was thick with the scent of dust and dampness, a stark contrast to the sterile, controlled environment of the ship. Jalaran stepped forward, his boots clicking softly on the metal floor as he approached the exit. Terran gave him one last glance. "Good luck, Jalaran." Jalaran paused, turning back to face her, his face set with determination. "I don't need luck. I have something better, understanding." With that, he stepped into the unknown, the doors to the world outside opening wide. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Jalaran stepped onto the soil of Earth. His boots sank into the soft earth, the scent of damp grass and fresh rain filling his nostrils. The land stretched out before him, sprawling with untouched beauty. He had expected to be overwhelmed by the chaos of human cities or the noise of urban life, but instead, the area around him was eerily quiet. The Zinthari warship, a silent titan of technology, loomed just behind him, its sleek form hidden in the shadows of the dense trees. He inhaled deeply, forcing his thoughts back into focus. The task at hand was not about the land, it was about the humans. If the Zinthari could make this work, if they could convince Earth's leaders to align with them, then both species would thrive. Failure, however, would mean destruction, not just for the humans, but for his own people as well. The stakes could not be higher. Jalaran, Terran's voice crackled through his communicator, a calm yet tense presence in his ear. "You're clear for now. No human patrols have detected your presence. But be quick. The longer you stay on the surface, the more likely someone will notice." He nodded, though she couldn't see him. Understood. He surveyed his surroundings. In the distance, he could see the faint outline of a small village nestled between rolling hills. The structures were simple, wooden houses and cobbled streets, completely different from the towering spires and steel of Zinthari civilization. These humans were primitive, yet there was something compelling about their resilience. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters far greater than what his people had ever faced. Jalaran's steps were measured as he moved toward the village. He had been briefed on Earth's history, on its battles, its conflicts, its people, and yet, he had not fully understood the depth of human tenacity. This was not just another species to subjugate. This was a species that could not be easily broken. And that made them dangerous, and potentially invaluable allies. As he walked, the sounds of the village grew louder, the chatter of voices, the clinking of metal, the distant cries of children. It wasn't a grand city, but it held a raw vitality that the Zinthari had long since forgotten. His mind raced, processing the millions of possibilities that lay ahead. The path narrowed, leading him into a small clearing. He stopped at the edge of the trees, hidden in the shadows, and observed the village more closely. A group of humans, 3 men and 2 women, were standing by a market stall, engaged in a heated conversation. Their words were too far to make out, but the gestures were unmistakable. They were arguing. He could see their faces, their expressions, intense, passionate. Each human was different, yet they all seemed to share an unyielding energy. They were full of emotion, a trait Jalaran had been told to be cautious of. Zinthari were a species driven by logic, precision, and calculation. Emotions, particularly in such high-stakes interactions, were something to be handled with care. "What do you think, Jalaran?" Terran's voice interrupted his thoughts again. Are you ready? He clenched his fists at his side. I must be. His voice was low but resolute. The human way was to face everything head-on. And this time, it was his turn to adapt. Jalaran moved forward, stepping out of the shadows and into the clearing. His eyes locked onto the group, who had now paused, sensing his presence. He held his breath, waiting for their reaction. Would they panic? Would they see him as a threat? One of the men, tall and broad-shouldered, took a step forward. His eyes narrowed, but there was no immediate fear in them, only curiosity. The other humans followed his lead, watching Jalaran closely. Who are you? The man asked, his voice steady but cautious. Jalaran's heart raced, but his face remained a mask of composure. He had studied human communication patterns, learned their languages, their mannerisms, their customs. But nothing could have prepared him for the reality of standing before them. This was not a simulation, this was not data, it was the humans, alive, real, and unpredictable. My name is Jalaran, he said, his voice steady, carrying the weight of the galaxy in those few words. I come in peace. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Peace? With someone, like you? He gestured to Jalaran's alien appearance, the pale skin, the sharp, angular features, and the strange, almost ethereal quality of his presence. I know I am different, Jalaran replied, his voice calm. But I do not wish to harm you. I come to offer an alliance. His words hung in the air like a fragile thread. If they snapped, there would be no going back. The group exchanged uneasy glances, their bodies tense, but still, none of them backed away. Instead, the woman beside the tall man stepped forward, her dark eyes full of suspicion but tinged with something else, interest. You expect us to trust you? She asked. After everything we've seen, after what we've gone through, you think we'll just accept you? Jalaran's gaze softened. I don't expect trust. I seek understanding. He paused, his next words coming with a weight that surprised even him. And I believe that you and I, both our species, can learn from each other. The group was silent for a long moment. Tension stretched, thick and palpable. The human who had spoken first, the tall man, was the first to break the silence. We'll see about that, he muttered, his eyes narrowing. Jalaran did not flinch. This was just the beginning. Jalaran's words hung in the air, a fragile bridge between his world and theirs. The human woman, her expression hardened with years of skepticism, stepped back as the tall man, a leader, perhaps, kept his steady gaze on Jalaran. Tension pulsed through the group, their stances defensive, their eyes full of suspicion. The village was quiet now, the distant sounds of the market fading as if the earth itself was holding its breath. I don't know about this, the tall man finally said, his voice low but firm. You say you come in peace, but we've heard enough of false promises to last a lifetime. The woman next to him, a middle-aged figure with sharp features, nodded grimly. Our people have been burned by others before. We don't trust easily. And if you're telling the truth, then we're already in too deep. Jalaran held his ground, his posture calm but vigilant. I understand. My people's history is not without its faults. But I am not here for conquest. I come to offer something better, something mutual. His eyes scanned the group, searching for a flicker of understanding, something to anchor the fragile alliance he hoped to form. The tall man crossed his arms, leaning back slightly as if weighing Jalaran's words. And why should we believe that? What does your people's peace cost us? The question was blunt, and it stung. Jalaran's fingers tightened into fists. He had hoped to avoid this, to avoid the painful truth of what this mission would require. There would be sacrifices, yes, there had to be. But they didn't need to know that just yet. I cannot promise there will be no price, he replied, his voice unwavering. But I promise the cost will be far less than the alternative. He allowed the weight of that statement to settle over the group. They were far from allies, but his words, his honesty, had already begun to sow seeds of doubt in their minds. The leader's gaze softened, but only for a moment. And how do you expect us to respond? You just walked into our village, offering words of peace. Words don't build trust. Actions do. Jalaran considered this. He had anticipated this challenge. Words could only go so far. Now it was time to prove that peace wasn't just something he spoke about, it was something he could deliver. "Allow me to show you," he said, his voice carrying a certainty that surprised even him. "In the next few days, I will help you. I will prove that my people can be trusted. That we can bring something of value to you, without expectation." The tall man raised an eyebrow. "And what kind of help are we talking about? You're one man, standing in front of a village of hundreds. What can you possibly offer us?" Jalaran's eyes flickered briefly to the woman beside him, who had been silent until now. Her gaze was piercing, and though she said nothing, Jalaran could feel the weight of her scrutiny. She wasn't buying into the peace he was offering, not yet. But that wasn't the immediate problem. "There's more than one way to help," Jalaran replied, his voice calm but firm. "I bring knowledge. Advanced technology. Weapons, if necessary. But most importantly, I bring something far rarer, stability. Your survival. A future that isn't marred by constant war or famine." The woman's eyes narrowed, her arms folding across her chest. "And what will you get in return? You can't expect us to just trust you because you speak well. There's always a catch. Always a price we'll have to pay." The tension between them was palpable now, the words crackling like an electric storm. Jalaran could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, his mind racing for the right answer. There was no easy path to peace, not with the weight of centuries of history behind the human species. But one thing he knew for sure was that he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after everything he had sacrificed to get here. "The price is not for you to bear alone," Jalaran said, his voice heavy with finality. "It's a shared burden. I bring knowledge that could advance your people's understanding of the universe, new technologies that could change everything for you. But you have to help me. You have to stand with me. We fight together, or we fall apart." The silence that followed was thick with the gravity of his words. The humans exchanged wary glances, each of them processing what he had said in their own way. The tall man's eyes flickered over Jalaran's face, and for a brief moment, Jalaran saw something shift. Perhaps it was the mere possibility that the stranger, this alien, was speaking the truth. "I still don't trust you," the man said finally, his voice less certain than before. "But maybe it's worth considering. I'll take your offer to the council. We'll talk." Jalaran nodded, a slight but genuine smile tugging at his lips. "That's all I ask." He turned to leave, but the woman stopped him with a firm voice. "One more thing, alien." He paused, turning to face her. "If you're really offering what you say you are," she continued, "then you'd better be ready to fight for it. Because peace doesn't come easy here." Jalaran met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "I am ready. I have been for a long time." And with that, he left the clearing, knowing that this was just the beginning. What lay ahead was unknown, but the stakes were clear. The path to peace would be long, fraught with obstacles, but for the first time, he felt that it might actually be possible.